Hello, everyone. This is Dice on Ice, and we're playing the first session of The Hunted. This game is going to be titled Pieces of the Past, and I'm really excited to kick off this cool world of Crifoth. And it's going to be fun to kick this off, have some fun D&D times, and let's just kick it off with Chad. Who are you, and what are you doing here?
Hey guys, my name's Chad. As far as you guys probably know me, I'm playing Rank Shank the Rotten, which I'm super excited to play. He is a Suri bandit, roguish little thief, and I love it. I love it. I'm excited for him.
Awesome. And Megan.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Megan, and I am the other half of this channel, Dice on Ice, and co-writer for Crifoth. And today I'm going to be, or for this campaign, I'm going to be playing V, a tiefling blood sorcerer. And so I am very excited for that.
And Jason.
Hey everybody, I'm Jason. Today I'm going to be playing Xandar, a human druid. First time I'm ever going to have any experience with the druid, so this is going to be interesting from my end. Really looking forward to this. Hope you guys enjoy it.
And last but not least, Rory.
Hey, I'm Rory, and I'm going to be playing Tali, the Ash Elf Outrider. And I'm excited to be playing an Outrider for the first time. I think that's a given. And yeah, we're going to put it down and see how this Outrider works.
Awesome. The sky is a crimson. It's dark. It's foreboding. The landscape is blasted, pitted, scarred, jagged. The plants that don't grow here, what's left of them are petrified, decaying husks of what used to be. Spindly fingers breaching through the hard, dry earth, stretching towards the sky, like someone reaching for the last gasp of air. The hills roll and tumble. The land, just this mess of jagged scenery. It is dry and hot in Crifoth. Water is rare. The coolness and respite from the sun's heat is even more rare. And survival, even more so. But survivors nonetheless exist in Crifoth. They live from day to day, doing what they must to survive. One such survivor is Rank Shank the Rotten. He's overlooking this scenery before him. He's standing upon a tall cliff, kind of overlooking a blasted badlands of cracked earth. It's flat. You can see for miles from this vantage point. A very tactical position, you might say. What does Rank Shank look like upon this cliff?
Rank Shank is a rather spindly looking Suri. Reptilian in nature, his small snout sort of gives way to these very jagged gator teeth with a brill of these spines that go all the way down his back, he has a number of different bone and leather strappings and paddings that have a number of different bags all around them. He looks out into the Badlands, into the wasteland, carrying what looks to be almost like a vulture's skull, has been knitted and reformed around the end of just this old ashen stick. He uses it like a climbing pickaxe, and he just sort of sticks it into the ground before him, looking and holding himself up, kind of eyeing the best vantage point, seeing the people or seeing the creatures that might pass by. And what does he see, Connor?
In the distance, whether an illusion or not, in the wavering heat of the sands, you see a commotion. Several individuals, perhaps fighting, perhaps talking. It's too hard to tell from such distance. But as you focus, your irises dilate in the way they do to focus on what you see, it seems there are 6 individuals, 5 clad in dark black armor, way too heavy and thick for a regular survivor. It looks very burdensome, very ornate, very cumbersome. It has these sharp jags to them, as if it was made of shattered pieces of glass, just fastened together, accented by red lines. And the 6th is definitely not in the same kind of apparel. What does V look like?
Compared to the others, V is not as dressed for combat, for direct melee combat. She wears these cloth wrappings around her body, fitting loosely around her legs to allow whatever air can get through to help to cool her under the heat. She stands with nothing but a dagger. No large sword, no shield, but just a dagger.
And the events that follow Rank Shank may even surprise you. You see, as you continue to watch this scene, you can tell that they are in battle. They are fighting one another. V, you're fighting 5 heavily armed legionaries. They wear the armor, the hell-forged armor of the Archfiends. This unnaturally crafted, forged in hellfire and blood of demons itself. This armor of great power, great durability, great importance. And you're standing there with nothing but a dagger and loose cloth. What do you do?
This is V. Okay. So standing in front of these legionaries, sweat just pouring down the back of her neck, both from the heat, but also from fear. She is going to run. Hoping that she can withstand the heat and the exhaustion better dressed than they would in their armor.
And I imagine V is much faster than these heavily armored legionaries. In Rangshank, you see the one figure turn tail and run. A figure yells at you up close. And what happened next? You feel a sharp prod in your stomach. You're hanging from your wrists, your feet dangling above the ground. It's dark. The air is musty. You see, illuminated by dim light, the sullen red face of a tiefling, inches from your own. He slaps you. Psh! I said what happened next.
So that's for me.
Yeah, that's you.
Okay.
Don't slap me, you creature. I do know nothing about us. Rangshank tells you nothing.
Another sharp jab meets your exposed belly. An elbow, perhaps, or maybe in a fist. Speak, creature! You said you saw her. Where did she go?
You speak man words.
He spits another like wad of blood in your face. Just not. It's almost like even though this tiny, frail lizard is getting the crap beaten out of him, there's just this air of, I know I can survive. Even if the logic isn't there, he believes it is.
And so you're kind of refuse to tell him anymore?
Yeah, for the time being.
Yeah. And at your stubbornness, this tiefling kind of steps back, now hidden in shadow. You hear rustling, a body being dragged. You can hear the feet being scuffing along the kind of a rough floor. You see this figure. They're barely wearing rags and scraps. The thing you notice the most about them is one of their arms is a sickly black. Looks unnaturally ill. Xander, you are at your grove. What does your grove look like?
My grove was one of the last places that Xandar knew where anything grew at all. The birch in the center kind of held everything together, emanating a natural divine power. that kind of fought off the death and decay surrounding everything else around it. Revered the tree with everything that I am. But it wasn't to be forever, as even the death surrounding the grove finally creeps in and sets a blight on the tree, and in turn myself. And then recently, a band of tieflings come in and desecrate my most holy place and make off with parts of the tree itself, gathering firewood or God knows only what, forcing me from my one place of solitude, and I'm chasing them down.
And on this fateful day, you decided to leave this grove, this sanctuary of yours now desecrated. You see another one of these red-blooded, horned tieflings leap down from a ledge, kind of walling in this grove. She looks very fatigued, winded, but alone. And I imagine you're maybe hidden at this point, at least by the dead greenery. And she approaches what's left of the pond at the very center. This small mud hole. What do you do?
From behind the foliage, I'm just observing now. I'm unfamiliar really with tieflings in general, and I can feel the evil that's running through her veins. But I'm not so quick to jump to action yet. Observing from a slight distance, I want to see what this intruder is after.
V, you've managed to outrun these legionaries. You've set them far back, perhaps even out of line of sight and in hearing. You climb down, jumping down this small ledge to see a small pond of water. It's a muddy pond. It's silent. You see the dead trees and growth around it. A testament to what stood there, but no longer does it stand. What do you do?
I can imagine that they put up a bigger fight than she thought. They have much more endurance than she expected. And though she outrun them, she can feel her throat burn in thirst. Thirst for two things, but one is more immediate than the other. And so she would crouch down, eyes darting quickly back and forth, just in case there's another, just in case one of them caught up or was flanking her. But this is an opportunity too good to pass up. Freestanding water is not something that you come across every day, and so you learn to take advantage of it. And so she would just crouch down, legs just still poised in case she needs to run again, but she would kind of cup her hands and begin to drink thirstily. And then after that, she would kind of almost try to dunk her head in and just kind of clean the sweat off the nape of her neck. Just feeling the coolness of the water seep over her.
And Xander, you see all this transpire just right ahead of you. You're hidden from this creature. You feel a sharp, hot jab at your side, a burn perhaps, a hot poker. You saw her! Tell us more! You hear that same gravelly voice. You're in a dark place. You can't see your surroundings. You realize it's a blindfold over your eyes. In fact, a whole kind of burlap sack over your head.
I wince from the pain in my side. Yeah, are my hands tied?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I wince as the jab comes into the side that I myself am blighted on, and it causes me to fall to the ground. And from the sacks, desecrate. She's desecrated. I just keep repeating these words over and over.
Did you see where she went? Tell us, maggot.
And of course, I'm just in spite, not playing along. They will not seek the vengeance that I'm after for the desecration of my grove. That is wholly on me, and I won't even entertain the thought of giving them a chance.
And at that stubbornness, they place another stroke of this hot poker. You can almost feel the heat of it before it touches your skin. And they press it in so hard, the pain itself causes you to black out just for a moment. V, you've been on the run after refreshing yourself at this little pond. And where are you headed?
For a moment, she just, after running a bit more further from the grove, and she would kind of stop. Because at first it was just getting away. Running away from them. But as she kind of looks around and sees the jagged rocks and the vast expanse of nothingness, she knows that was stupid. You never just run full tilt into the waste. That in itself is a death warrant, but she thinks maybe that's what I deserve. Maybe I deserve to die here, alone in the waste. But instincts still kick in. And she still tries to get a gauge of where she is, where the sun is. She figures that perhaps at night, under the light of the stars, that she may be able to navigate somewhere. But in the sun, there's really nothing.
So you take shelter.
But she can.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so she would go ahead and take shelter, and just decides to wait, but to watch in case they come back, in case they find her. But her plan right now is to wait until night when she can gauge where she is.
And in this time, this respite you're taking to wait out the evening of Crifoth's hot sun, a face of one of these legionaries just stands out to you. It's remarkable. It's just resonates in your mind for some reason. It's a face you saw as they glared down upon you with their wicked blades as they were chasing you across the sand. What did this particular tiefling legionary look like?
He had a scar across his face, going from the right all the way down to the left. And she remembers him, in fact, getting that scar from one of the other Blood Knights. And so it wasn't quite healed over. It was kind of festering a little bit. Swollen still. His eye kind of half shut. A permanent sneer now affixed to his face, though he always showed it without the scar. That was all that she could really see. That's all that she could really notice about him.
Tali, you come to, your body feeling bruised and battered and broken. You look up limply. Your arms are dangling, or you're dangling from your arms, your feet off the ground. Your wrists are sore, your hands are numb. And you look up and see such a face of a tiefling. This long scar over their face. It's healed a bit, but it's still fairly fresh. He glowers at you. Willing to speak this time?
I'll speak. How'd you get that scar?
He refuses to really answer the question there. You see in his hand, he's wielding a kind of a cudgel of sorts. Just this blunt beating tool. And he's got a firm grip on it. And he just kind of grunts at you. So when did you see her? The tiefling.
Don't know who you're talking about.
He kind of just pats the club against his hand. You know, we can do this easy way or the hard way.
Where's my bounder?
Fed to the wolves. Now speak.
If you killed a Tane, then you're not getting a word out of me.
This broad blow to your ribs is the next thing you feel. But your memory, you just can't help but shoot back to the memory you had. You're attending a fire. It's dark. It's starlit. It's barely illuminating the desert scenery. What does your character look like in this kind of campfire scene?
He would be lounging kind of on his bounder, kind of like within its legs, but you'd see fairly tall creature with the bits of his skin sticking out being a light ashen gray, but the fire would flicker off of the more flint-colored gray of his eyes. He wears what seems almost like a full suit. He has a leather armor, but it's all connected with this billowy white fabric meant to keep him cool under the sun. And it usually wraps over his head, but now it hangs down over his shoulders. And his long hair is tied mostly up in one braid, and you can see it's dark black and straight with a streak of white that runs through one section of it.
And in this firelight, your eyes are hard to adjust to the dim, dusky scenery. But out of the corner of your eye, you see movement. A figure, perhaps, skulking in the night. V, you're traveling under the cover of night now. But you pause, you see what looks to be, as you crested this hill, a flickering light of a campfire. Just a bit yonder. What you see is an ash elf resting, but still being vigilant, as the ash elves always are. What do you do?
An ash elf alone is very peculiar. And she sees the fire and she can feel the pit in her stomach that is almost turning inside out with hunger. She can't really remember the last time she ate. And looking at the stars proved to be a lot more difficult than her Blood Knight leaders made out to be. And the night is getting cold. Very cold. And what she would try to do is take her blade out and kind of sneak towards the fire, blade drawn, and she would approach the fire and sit down, saying nothing to the ash elf, but pointing a blade at him and eyeing him, but sitting across the fire far enough that she can still feel the warmth, but not too close.
Polly, what are you doing as all of this occurs? As this figure approaches?
Well, at what point do you think Tali... I mean, you said he caught a glimpse. I imagine he probably focused on it, but not only that, Etain, the bounder, probably both of her paws kind of snapped up like the way a dog does when it hears something outside and it's been resting, kind of. And he obviously cranes his head further in that direction and watches this shadowed figure, I think, as she crosses the distance, and just kind of eyes her as she comes and sits down and points the knife. And he just looks at her and, Traveler, there's no need. If you're hungry, there is food. But trouble, you don't want this night.
It seems there is trouble wherever I go. So this night is no different. But she would kind of lower the knife a little bit, not exactly sheathing it, but no longer pointing it at you. She would eye your bounder very, very cautiously.
Yeah, and Tali, kind of without taking his eyes off you, turns his shoulders a bit and pets the Bounder, feeling her muscles and the back legs kind of bunch up next to him, and knowing that that's a sign of nerves and aggression, just calms her down a bit and turns back and says, well, and he just digs at a bag near his feet, and I think he would pull out some sort of dried meat and just kind of toss it on a stone and try to get it out of the dirt, but without necessarily putting his hand right up next to a person with a knife.
And she would kind of look at you and then look down and kind of slowly crawl towards it. Just kind of get it up quickly and begin to eat it. I never met an ash elf as kind to what I am as you.
Kind. Yes, that's one way of looking at it, perhaps. I find myself without a tribe. I find many things change when you are without a tribe.
And did you do something wrong? Did your tribe kick you out?
He scowls a bit. I was not kicked out. They are missing.
Oh. And she would kind of almost look disappointed. But she would also mutter, I'm sorry.
And I think when she does, the Bounder kind of like lets that one leg kind of tuck in and kind of goes back onto its shoulder again. And I kind of feel less worried about my pet here. So I start to stand up and I dust my pants off, and I kind of hold my hand out, but I point to the knife at the same time and say, my name is Tali. Without the blade, please. And sticks his hand out.
And she would put the blade further down. It is no longer in her hand now. And she would reach out her hand to grasp yours. And she would say, I'm V. And like as
Well
you
met,
kind
V.
of pull your hand away, there's like some kind of dried blood that in the fire you can see that is just, she's just covered in it now that she's gotten a bit closer to the fire.
So he's going to say well met, but as he does, he kind of takes his hand away, he sort of sees you in the glow of the fire, sees the blood. He doesn't freak out per se, but he gets a bit edgy and kind of starts to look around. And he actually takes a step back and puts his hand on his bow and pulls it up without drawing it or stringing it or anything, and just says, kind of looks back at you, blood covered. You weren't lying when you said you find trouble wherever you go.
Yes, it is. It is a talent. and she kind of like jerks her head to where she had come from, thinking that she heard something. She kind of like darts her eyes around. You were so kind. It's not safe for me to stay here. You were very kind. Thank you. And she would begin walking away, kind of looking back beyond the campfire as she does so.
Tully will turn over his shoulder and watch you go. He'd sort of like to stop you, but he knows you're right, and he doesn't want any more trouble. He starts to string his bow, and he says, "It's aim. On guard." And you see the bounder kind of stand up and move a bit out into the night.
The glimpse of her face as she leaves is the image that just resonates in your mind the most when in this drab scene of you clutching for anything to live off of. You're dangling, you feel hungry, starved, and you wake up once again, and your cell you're in is empty. The intimidating, imposing figure of the tiefling is no longer there. You're by yourself in this dark, dank, musty, dry, just decrepit room. It's small, almost like a cage. It's barely 5 foot across in either direction. You can't feel the ground, but if you were to reach with your toes, perhaps you could barely brush the kind of the caked dirt of what makes up the floor. Likewise, Rankshank. You are left alone for the time being, dangling from your wrists. The air smells unfamiliar, strange, disgusting. It's cramped here. You can't see beyond just, this 5x5 little closet you're in. And Xander, you find yourself as well chained by loose rope. Not really chained, just bound by rope. You're again dangling by your arms. Go ahead. Yeah.
Am I still blindfolded, or do I have?
You also have the sackcloth over your head too. Yeah. The three of you, your eyes shrink at the sudden bright light that appears from beyond, directly ahead of you. The bright light of daylight shining through a now ajar door. Standing in this door is an imposing, not really imposing, is a silhouette. You can tell by the horns they wield on their head to be a tiefling. Entering, perhaps. You hear the scuttle of blades being drawn from elsewhere. Boots shifting on loose earth. V, you've traveled under cover of night for a few days. You've made by on scraps of water and food that you've scavenged. The sustenance provided you by the Ash Elf helped a lot. And by happenstance, you saw in the distance this small, ramshackled shack, to say for lack of a better word, built onto a ruined wall of what was built before the fall of humanity. It's lashed together of petrified wood and stones and rope. It's a small building, but flying high like a flagpole in the wind is the flag of the Legion. It's looks very just flapping, not proud, but just listlessly in the still wind. You have been watching this building for a bit. It seems empty. But the thing that catches your eye is that bounder tied to a post outside. It's muzzled, its legs are bound by rope, its hind legs too. It seems scrawny and ill, just laying in a heap in the scorching sun. What do you do?
Rory, did your bounder have like a kind of like a defining feature to it, something like something that made it kind of distinct?
Yeah, the fur pattern is mostly like a mottled spotting, kind of like a cheetah or a leopard. But like right at her rib cage, the way the dots kind of collect, sort of almost looks like a star.
Mm-hmm. So I think that V would kind of put two and two together that this is the last bounder that she saw, and coincidentally, this one is near, and she kind of sees the pattern on the flank that she may have remembered from just eyeing it so cautiously at the fire, and so a horrific sense of guilt would wash over her. She's already let too many people die under her actions or misactions, mistakes. And though she's been running from these legionaries, she takes a deep breath and she kind of jogs over, half jogging, half kind of crouching, keeping her eyes out for any sign of movement over to the bounder. And she would attempt to cut the ropes that bind it.
Easily done. The ropes are very poorly crafted. They're very kind of a shoddy material. They slice through very easily. The bounder herself, though, is almost essentially half dead, unmoving, despite the freed restraints. With the eyes, the creature barely shifts its head enough to have its eye meet yours. And those eyes you recognize from that campfire a few nights ago. And from this close, you can hear from inside this shack. It's awfully quiet, but you can tell there's perhaps two individuals within. You can tell by their talking, two distinct voices. They seem to be arguing or discussing something, but you can't make out what it is. But the pitch to their voice is definitely one of a tiefling.
And sorry, you said that they were where? Sorry, you cut out for a second.
Inside the shack.
Oh, inside. Okay. So what she would do is she would against all senses kind of screaming at her to just move on, to just kind of run, just keep going. She moves up to the door and she kicks it open and then she's going to cast a light, just kind of trying to blind them and disorient them if she can. She wants to cast it on the door. She wants to like touch the inside of the door and just have it like, or I guess maybe the wall or something.
Totally. And at that, I would like everyone please to roll initiative.
$11.
18 total for me.
Xander, you see this figure kick ajar this door. This blinding light emanating from the door frame, the wall. It's hard to tell in your almost catatonic state. You squint, you can see the figure. It's none other than the same figure that drank from your grove a while back. It's hard to, you can't tell how many days it's been in here. You can feel your wrists at the ropes. You can see through the threadbare sackcloth. You can still see some stuff, but it's hard to make out details. But what do you do in this instance as this all happens?
What I see is her coming in and nothing else. There's no other action.
Sorry?
I said what I see is just the figure entering, and I'm fairly certain it's the figure that desecrated my grove.
Yeah,
that's all I see.
That's all you see. Yeah.
There's. I would start straining against the ropes. You said they were kind of loose.
Yeah.
Could I make a roll maybe to kind of find the strength to just yank my hands out of them? Or
absolutely, yeah. You could use what little strength you have to remain to try and wriggle or wrest yourself from the grip of these ropes. That'd be a strength.
Oh, that's going to be a massive fail. 3 on the dice.
Yeah, they tighten as you struggle against them. You feel your own weight kind of pulling on them, and as you move, it just fastens them even tighter on your wrists. You can feel the blood being cut off now. Your fingertips starting to go numb.
Okay. Yeah, as I struggle, I've got my eyes locked on this figure that comes to the door. Unsure of what exactly is going on, but I'm now yelling that I know who you are. You will not get away with this. And as I'm yelling this, I'm struggling and trying to free myself and just don't have a limp. Just anger building as I let my senses go into the environment around me. That'll be my turn.
Awesome. 2 tieflings stand up from their seats. They were sitting at a kind of a shoddy wooden table with a knife sticking in the wood at the top of the table. They're wearing simple garments of loose cloth. You can see the armor racks directly behind them. At their sides, they have these blood obsidian hell-forged blades, smaller ones, a dirk or dagger in size. You see one of them is got this massive scar from left to right. It's healed over a bit. You can still see the places where it's scabbed. For some other places, it's knitted closed as a scar. And these two legionaries, they shout, "Oh, fuck, it's her!" And they leap for you, these two daggers drawn. And they try to subdue you. And so they're going to attack you, essentially. One of them is able to grab onto your arm. The knife poised near your throat. You're now grappled. Tali, what do you do as you see all of this occur?
He's going to kind of blink his eyes and realize who he's looking at, and just try to get her attention. Friend. He's just trying to draw her attention, but without. He doesn't know what's going on. He's been beaten recently, without drawing any attention and getting clocked over the head again.
Yeah, you definitely can tell that the two guards essentially are pretty occupied at the moment now, kind of in essentially melee with her. So you kind of hiss in her direction, and she probably would hear, but don't know if she could, really.
I think that she would glance over very quickly, while trying to just be grappled by this person.
And you would see the gray-skinned elf from a few nights prior. Rib cages showing a bit more, covered in welts and bruises from chest to legs, up the arms, beaten thoroughly. But is Tali going to do anything on this moment of time?
I think he would start to he would definitely start to struggle, but I don't know if he'd have the wherewithal to kind of put any intelligent thing together. So if anything, it would be probably a very poor strength check.
Yeah,
but he will pull against.
Absolutely. You can give me a strength check here, please.
Yes, a very poor strength check. A 1 on the dice with no modifier, so that is a 1.
Yeah, these ropes hold fast. It's hard to gain leverage when your feet are off the ground.
Yeah, and he's just completely out of it. So I think it's more of just like this weak kind of flailing.
And Rankshank, you see these events transpire ahead of you. What do you do?
Rankshank sees the door basically become a blinding hot sun in front of him. His eyes, his reptilian eyes, they double blink from both eyelids, closing them tightly to not be blinded. So used to being in small, lower crevices and dark, hidden places, he's not used to that bright of a light, but he takes this as an opportunity. He begins to think of his own survival, think of how he might get through this. And I think his first instinct is to take one of his claws and to try and scrape away or pull at the ropes that are hanging above him. If he can't somehow manage to get his fingers and claws to cut through the rope, he would try to use his tail to then like swing upward so he can get leverage and pull himself down. He's not a very strong creature, but he is definitely like crafty. And so I think that would be what he would do, is he would see this blinding light and see all of that motion start to head toward the door. And he'd be like, this is my chance. Okay, I'm going to try to do something. And so I imagine like a sleight of hand, or how would you want me to roll? Okay.
Sleight of hand would absolutely be working. Yeah, definitely a dexterity based one.
Okay. So. Oh, yeah. So that's going to be...
Oh yeah, so yeah, you lift yourself. Yeah, it's totally undo it.
Okay, so I imagine in that brief moment, the legionaries run toward V at the door, and he's just like, he cuts the rope. His tiny little frame falls to the floor below, but he catches himself, and it's quiet. And then he sneaks back into the back corner. And is there anything on the ground of these, like, is there anything on the ground of these places? Maybe bones, little scattered pieces of whatever that might be around that he might be able to pick up and use as a inspired weapon?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
A rock, a branch,
So I think his first instinct is he drops to the floor, takes his tail and swings it around, stirring up the dirt so that it doesn't look like he fell. And then he backs away into the shadows, holding a small rib bone from an old meal that they had in the hallway, somewhere that had fallen into the cage or something. And he just backs into the corner and waits.
V, you are being just almost like your arm has been grabbed by one of these legionaries, a blade poised at your neck. The other is still en route to you, essentially, on the farther side of the table. You can see up close just this grimace of the scar. You see a look of just vengeance and hatred and just sheer recognition in this particular tiefling's eyes. Like, you are important to that tiefling, essentially. But what do you do in this brief moment you have?
So the way he's grappled me, do I still have movement of my arms? Both of them?
I would, yeah. I'd say your one arm kind of pinned, but you still got the hand to do stuff. Your other arm is completely free, so...
Okay, so the one that's... Okay, the one that's completely free is going to take out her dagger, and she's going to take it and swing it, but instead of hitting this guy, she's going to cut the palm of her own hand, and their blood just starts seeping down this dark crimson color that almost looks black against her red skin. And she's just going to use her strength and push it into his chest, and immediately the blood kind of squishes out, and you can see that it's glowing in this weird reddy hue. And she's going to cast Inflict Wounds on this guy. So that's a unnatural 20 to hit for for 20 necrotic damage.
You can describe to me how this spell you've mustered completely kills this unarmored legionary at your throat.
So I can just imagine like this look of recognition comes across this guy's face, which angers V. And she kind of snarls at him. And she just says, "Are you happy you found me?" And she's just going to push in, and the effect of this blood is actually just like dissolving his skin away, and just he screams as like these tendrils of like almost smoke comes up billowing from his chest, and she just keeps going further and further, her hand almost engulfed, and you can hear just ribs cracking. And then she withdraws her hand. It's soaking in blood. And he looks at her with this fear and just drops.
Xander, from beyond this threadbare burlap sack, you see the most foul magic you've ever experienced. Probably ever. As this tiefling dissolves in front of you, the smell nasty and putrid. The smell of smoke and decaying flesh just assaulting your nostrils as this one tiefling dispatches the other. What do you do?
Just offended at the sheer unnaturalness of it. Xander is reaching out and can still feel even just hints of life surrounding him. I would like to cast Entangle as I reach out and command the under roots beneath the ground to spring forth and entangle both of the tieflings.
Absolutely, yeah. So, V and the other tiefling will have to make, I think, strength saves.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the DC of something, so...
Yeah, DC is going to be 14.
Cool. Well, the other remaining tiefling fails.
I got a 16, even though I'm super weak.
Okay, so
what does this
imagine...
look like? Yeah.
Imagine just a relaxing body of Xandar as I reach forth, and the ground erupts with just these dry, desiccated, thorny roots and branches that just swirl up around the other tiefling beside V, and reaches for her, and I imagine she just kind of steps back out of reach of it, and as they whip around trying to snag their target. The other tiefling that is captured is held completely in place, and I imagine he's brought down to his knees as the thorns dig into his throat and his armor and arms and legs, completely helpless.
Yeah, I imagine as he's being buckled down by these roots, it's actually almost encompassing him, almost like a cocoon. And as these roots slowly kind of crawl around, the only thing you can see V left is his face, held still by these roots. And this face it's a face of sheer terror. Like, you can see a fear of death in his eyes. You just see his premonition of what's to come. Just, it's all there, and he can't do anything about it. He's stuck, and he tries to wrench free from these roots, but he's unable to. He's held fast, and he starts stammering, pleading, "No, no, please, please, please. I wasn't there. Please. I'm just a recruit." Tally, what do you do?
Tally is watching this kind of helplessly, but I think it gives him a little bit of time, and he's going to try to take a little bit of the weight off of his binds with his hands, and kind of slip them off, like real quick. Just basically another attempt to try to get out of there.
Yeah, I mean, give me like a sleight of hand or dexterity check.
Okay. $16.
You're able to free one of your wrists. The other still is tight. And with
He was
that,
off the ground, so I think
you can kind of feel the ground with your one other side of your foot now. So
yeah, I think Tally has gotten himself into actually a more precarious and probably less comfortable situation. So he is now like on one foot and one hand kind of stretched out as far as he can, just kind of cursing under his breath, like as blood kind of dribbles out in his spittle. And he's kind of trying to see what's going on in the combat. And what he sees right now is basically everybody entangled except the tiefling that he recognizes.
yeah, you saw a puddle of what used to be a tiefling, and then V standing over an encased, like in roots tiefling, like just in a mere moment, like in a blink of an eye, this all happened.
Yeah, and he's just kind of shaking his head in shock, and he's just at his sort of good luck here, and he's just going to go like, "Friend, I'm in a bit of a bind," and points up to his bound wrist.
Rank Shank, you're in the corner. The moments that have passed are moments that are very strange to your nostrils, to say the least. It's to see someone channel a power to liquefy another person in seconds is horrifying to some, practical to others. But you see this, you thought this would be more of a scruff, perhaps. But now you just see the one tiefling standing over the other. The others being bound and just completely encased in a cocoon-like of roots. What do you do?
Rankshank is, for all matters of the word, a survivor. He slowly crawls out of that shadow, bone rib dagger in hand. He sniffs the now like blood soaked air, and it's like his eyes dilate like a shark. He smells blood to water, and he's excited. He's like a vulture going to the feast. And you see, I think Tali would then see from the cage next to him, the bone dagger. You see this scaled nostril figure just sort of clamber and bound up onto this cage. Rankshank is surprisingly small in comparison to humans or tieflings. He's this almost tiny figure, just come on, get out here. And he like cracks the bone dagger even sharper into the lock, and eventually somehow pushes it open, I imagine. And after he gets out, he just He looks at Tali for a minute, just a second. He stops, almost like looking at a deer caught into a snare, right? Like the idea of fresh meat that just dangles there, and you could eat it, but then he smells, and he shakes his head, and he looks at the floor with the fresh meat, and like immediately starts tracking over there to the two tiefling creatures. But as he gets to the fray and he wants to stab, he wants to start attacking, his claw goes up. And he like stabs at these vines that have now like cocooned in, and he's angry. It's almost like in his clutch when they were born. You have to fight to live, basically. In the Suri culture, you have to fight to live, right? Food is a necessity. And so it's almost like when a Suri attacks into an egg of another creature or some other thing, he wants to crack it open and break it open and take what's his before it can take it. Like, so he just keeps stabbing at this and begins to get frustrated, and then looks at the tiefling, and then looks to the human in the other cage.
I want food. Give Ranchak food. Ranchak let you live.
I'd like to give you a point of inspiration for that. Just flat out right there. That's amazing. V, what is your reaction to this raptor-like creature climbing out of the shadows and stabbing fruitlessly at this egg of a cocoon of vines directly in front of you?
I can almost imagine that in the past, going out with the Blood Knights and seeing the Sasuri just kind of there, they would avoid them at all costs, but they kind of consider them more pests than anything, especially the Quickfoots. Little more than rats. And so she would just kind of look at Rankshank and just you can have this one if you want. And then she's just gonna turn to the Ash Elf and her, someone the person that she came in here to save in the first place. And she would go and try and cut him down.
And that's easily done. So, yeah.
Thank you. I thought I'd die in here.
Yes, well, you showed me a lot of kindness, and so now we are even. We should
True.
go before more come.
Tell me, how did you know I was in here?
I saw your bounder from the campfire. He's outside. I've untied him. I hope he's still out there.
His eyes kind of light up when she mentions that, and just, oh, she lives, and he will just kind of run outside Although, does he see the druid?
In the illumination of this scene, definitely can see the figure dangling next to yours.
Okay.
Still struggling against my bonds.
But definitely active and awake, despite, you can't really see his face. It's covered in a sackcloth, still bound, but there's, definitely active. You can see him kind of like wriggle and kick and stuff.
Yeah, and just so I think like hearing his bounders alive, he starts to like run out, but just kind of remembering the clanks next to him in the cell, he kind of stops and looks over and goes back and tries to free the prisoner next to him.
And Xander, you feel your bonds being loosened and cut and untied, and the sackcloth, cast off from your face, and you see the ragged ash elf that you heard from next door, adjacent to you in this time you've spent here. I mean, now you see him full in the flesh, not just his sounds, but his actual figure. His tall, imposing height, probably a few inches more than yours, at least. His slender body. What do you do?
Gods know how long I've been hanging there. The struggling and the calling upon my powers have weakened me even more. My vision becomes hazy in and out as I'm struggling to even remain conscious. But I look up and see V in front of me, and anger overcomes everything as I try to regain my footing and stand up and yell, "You!" But the haziness takes over. I lose focus and everything goes black as the rot in my arm. What you guys would notice with that is like black, like vein, like tendrils underneath my skin reaching out. And I scream in pain and fall completely unconscious.
I would look over to V and just say, "I know we're even, but will you help me carry him out of here?"
We don't have much time. He would just be extra weight. But... And she just takes a deep breath. I suppose being a human, he wouldn't have much of a chance out here, would he? Okay. Let's take him out. And then she would look over to Rankshank. Do you know this one? I should say that to Tally.
As they're looking, he's currently devouring like bits of like entrail and like whatever ichor was left over from the tiefling debacle.
I heard his sounds.
He looks at you both.
And I turn and look at you.
Like just cocking his head, almost like a kid who's just interested in like knowing what the parents are talking about in the room. Like, I'm not aware of what you're saying, but I want to know what you're saying.
Well, if he knows what's good for him, he'll follow us, but I'm not touching that.
He licks his top jaws, and it's like this like slimy line of viscous blood. He like gets up and moves towards you, V, closer and closer, almost examining you. And then you see him immediately lunge for your hands, right? He like goes to grasp them and examines them like, how did you do this? Where did this happen from this?
Blood fountain. Mm. How? How?
And she would just like jerk her hands away immediately, like almost going to like kick him. But just get out of here, you creepy little. Ugh.
He sniffs around. I think he's sniffing all of you, almost like a dog. But he definitely sniffs the tiefling the longest. And then he nods his head.
Shank. Thank you, blood fountain. You're good. Yeah.
And you see as he does this, he spits like a wad of like the viscous blood out the side of his mouth, and like picks up bits and pieces that he might be able to use as weapons later, and just like shoves them into bits and pieces of his armor.
Okay, we have to get going. There's no telling if there's any more.
And Tolly's just gonna kind of shoulder more of the druid as you say that. Just tuck his arm under.
And she'll get on the other side of him to help Tally out in holding his weight.
Tali, you would feel an intense heat coming from the infected side of Xandar.
Rankshank, as you're kind of milling about in this room, as you kind of step upon a portion of the floor, it feels different. It feels hollow underneath. It has a kind of a reverberation to it. And you look down, you see just a kind of a trapdoor beneath your feet, kind of covered in bits of loose dirt, sand, bit of bits of small amounts of like bark and other small shrubbery bits.
Below me, I see a sort of trapdoor looking thing. Okay. So as my claws sort of like tink against the bottom of this, I look down at it. Curious, I cock my head. And then you see, like, did they take our weapons or anything? Did they take our weapons?
Kind of, you'd scan the room and you'd see kind of a haphazard kind of just chest, not really like with a lid or anything, just kind of a box with just a bunch of stuff in it.
Like, if I wanted to, if I could like break it open. I just wanted to know if I had any like other weapons other than the ones that I'm makeshifting on the fly. And I think that he would sort of tap it, realize it's hollow, and then speak up. But when he speaks, it's almost like it's really broken, and he doesn't have a word in your common tongue for it. So all he can do is
I think that V would kind of like look back at him and kind of look to Tally and just kind of like shrug.
Yeah, Tally's gonna be like, crack? Is he creek? What?
And he just gets like so angry, and he begins to like do what a dog would normally do, like a dog or a lizard. He like begins to move stuff off of the trap door, clawing at bits and pieces, moving his body around in like a circular fashion, and then like just sits on the trap door, tapping it with 2 fingers, as obvious as possible.
I think Tally would be able to get the point, and looking back at V, it kind of like, I guess there's something there. And he would start to lean the druid like against the door frame. And
Well, yeah, go have a look. See what the little thing has found. I'll hold up the... And she would like kind of, you know, the one side is on like the door, and she'd hold up the other end so that you could go.
Yeah, and I'll kind of walk up and I'll kind of like press with my foot. I'll be like kind of kicking the area to like hear whatever it is that he's talking about.
Yeah, and the ground feels very hollow. You can actually see a bit of a kind of a groove in wood. It's this petrified wood panel kind of just covering a portion of this kind of earth of the ground. It's got a little bit of hole you can easily use as a handle.
And if I look around too, do I see that crate with our belongings?
Yeah, there's definitely, you can see that on the far side of this little shack is a ramshackle box with, you see kind of like maybe your bow unstrung, kind of just sticking out of it, as well as like this
Yeah,
staff
so I
with
think
like a vulture head kind of perched on it, just lashed together with like tendons and leather, as well as the various belongings of these 3 unfortunate souls.
so kind of looking at seeing that seam and seeing the crate, Tali's going to kind of like walk over there. He's going to kind of like grab his things. He's just going to kind of actually, I think, grab the crate and just kind of pull it over with his, and he's going to reach in and grab his shield. He's going to stick his shield under there and like press it down and lift it up, revealing it for Rankshank.
Yeah, and Rankshank sees like this kind of just, let's call him a tunnel, kind of leading down further into the earth, obscured kind of by darkness, but a ladder leaning against the side of this kind of just dug out portion of the ground, maybe a foot off from the entrance.
Rankshank's first instinct is to like, ooh, I want to go, I want to see, I want to scavenge, I want to loot. Like that's his first instinct to do. His claws are sort of gripped around the edge of this trapdoor, and he then looks up at Tali. Like, he looks up and then back down as if to say, like, are we going in? Do you want to go in here, or what are we doing? Because, like, at this point, you've kind of gathered he's just hungry. He's not going to savagely, brutally gouge your eyes out in this tunnel, probably. Maybe. I'm not going to say.
Tali's going to look at him, and he's going to shake his head. No, he's going to look back at V and say, there's a tunnel, but if Attain is outside, then...
And she would nod. Would I know anything about? Can I make a roll to see if I have been in something like this and would know what's down there?
You know right off the bat that this is a Legion outpost. They're very poorly maintained, not very staffed. Right by the evidently, there's only 2 legionaries here. They are essentially kind of these posts where messengers would come and go, kind of just to make sure that everything is a-okay in this neck of the woods. And absolutely, they would have. Sometimes they're multiple stories tall, these great towers. Sometimes they're just these ramshackle shacks. But I mean, a second level to this one is not unexpected, but still kind of like, oh wow, there's more to this shack than meets the eye, essentially.
Yeah, and I think immediately her mind would come to, this is possible storage. They could have water down there. They could have food that they have, kept hidden, that if anyone kind of passed through, they wouldn't maybe immediately see it. And so she would kind of look at Tali and she says, well, I mean, the little one might be right. We might want to just take a quick look. If it goes too far, then we don't want to risk it. It might lead to another outpost, and we don't want to deal with that, but it might lead to something good, like water. How about this? You try to get this human to wake up, and Rangshank and I will go down and you can also tend to your bounder, and Rangshank and I will go down and just take a quick look.
And I think Tali kind of looks a little puzzled at first. He's not familiar with like the Legion or like the idea of having enough water to store some underground and keep it. But he'll kind of be like, "Water? Yes, of course. If they have water, we should take it." And he'll just kind of resume his spot though, and he'll kind of like almost full Nelson the druid, like put his arms under both of the armpits and kind of hold up, and then start to kind of walk backwards and support the body as best he can with all of his body.
Yeah, we won't go too far. We'll be back quickly, hopefully.
Yeah, and he'll be like...
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, you'll see him, but he'll just be like heaving. He's weak, and he's carrying someone weak. So just picture 2 people having a really hard time.
Yeah, and then V would turn to Rangshank and just... Lizards first.
And he just immediately just turns tail and drops through the hole.
Yeah, it's a short drop. You land probably, on a 3-point land, about a 10-foot drop down. Again, you can kind of feel it's this cramped kind of cave-like area. Probably very, very familiar and accustomed to such areas. It's dark, and you see, as your eyes are accustomed to the dim light only coming from the entrance above, you see essentially a kind of a small, maybe 10 feet in diameter, kind of little closet room. Along one wall are these barrels, kind of hoisted up and kind of like almost like a keg, if you can imagine a keg, just kind of propped up on stands, as well as dominating in the center upon like a little rock that's just there. The rock is covered in some kind of pelt of some creature. And atop it is this small metal kind of strongbox. It's maybe 2 fists in size. It's just sitting kind of dominating the center. As well as you kind of see a makeshift bench kind of like almost like a workbench or something along the other wall, and you see kind of a torch holder kind of fastened into the wall on one side as well. The thing you meet the thing you can tell the most though as you enter this room is like the smell of dried, unbloodied, very unappetizing meat. Meat, but like it's been cooked. It's no good kind of meat. And the smell originates from just this line of jerky, kind of just hanging, drying in this very, very just dry atmosphere. It's salted and gross. And yeah, that's kind of what you see.
Okay. Yeah. So nothing appetizing to Rankshank. Rankshank is now disappointed severely. He sighs, but he looks up to V, and
Damn, damn.
All right. And she would kind of slowly make her way down the ladder, but like looking at Rankshank the whole time, and you can see that she's just waiting for him to just like perhaps jump up and bite her ankles or something.
he like slithers off into the middle of this room. His dark vision not really giving any notice to how dim the room is. But he smells water, right? He smells like, is it water or wine or?
Definitely water. Yeah.
Definitely water. Okay, so he does smell water, and that does excite him to a certain degree because he needs that every now and then to definitely keep the scales dry, to keep himself moving in this desert-like environment. And I think just to test it, he sniffs one of the casks and pokes a hole through it with his claw.
Immediately, this rivulet of clear water. Like it's not murky. It's not, it's crystal clear water. Just starts pouring out of it. Kind of a little waterfall, and it makes a little splash and a puddle down at the ground below, forming this kind of almost a pool. After each second goes by, you hear the little splash, kind of run, almost like flowing water, just forming at your feet.
I think, I think Rankshank would then look up to V, like thinking that he did a good deed. Like this is something that's good, because he sees the water and he's like, "Yeah, this is right."
Immediately, V would just, "What are you doing? You're wasting that. That's precious."
He like saw your voice and he saw your lips say the word waste. And so that's a moment when he's going to try and repeat the word waste, right?
Waste? No. Rankshank, no waste. Rankshank found it. Not wasted.
Then what is this? And she kind of like covers the hole with her hand so that it won't kind of come out anymore. But then she kind of pauses and looks down at him, but nods and... But you did find it, so... Good job, I guess.
and he like you see that even though it's clear, crystal clear water, and he could drink out of the crystal clear water, the moment that you say he did a good job, it's like he drops down and begins to lap up the dirt water that's on the floor, right?
And you can kind of taste the earthiness to it, you know, just like the little bits of dirt and rock and pebbles and whatever, you know, par for the course, essentially. But even then, even when it's mixed with the dirt, kind of muddy, it's still just a little bit more satisfying than random wasteland water. And after finding this bounty in this small dank cave underneath this outpost, we're going to take a 15-minute break just to go do our stuff. We'll come back.
Sweet.
Yeah, sounds good.
Be right back, guys.
Thank you. Be right back.
Alrighty. I hope everybody is enjoying watching as much as I'm enjoying playing. This is pretty awesome. I love me some Crifoth. Yeah, totally infected. It's a kitty. Hello, gato. Say hello to the peoples.
Oh, it's a kitty. It's a kitty.
Yeah.
So that was a little fun stint into Crifoth.
For sure.
I did a little experiment for that first half of the session, or first 2/3. Yeah, probably going to be about 2/3. Complete experiment. I had never done anything like that before, and I'm wondering how it. I'm glad it kind of panned out, not as a flop. You know.
I don't think this could be categorized as a flop in any way, shape, or form. But this is
yeah.
This is nice and brutal, and I love it.
Yeah. Like that's something you see in movies is like scene flashback, scene flashback, scene flashback, like through each character's eyes kind of stuff. I'm like, I really wanted to replicate that in a game, and I've never seen it done in a game. I'm like, you know what? Let's try it. Let's see how it works.
Hey, for sure, man. It's brilliant.
And I'm glad you guys caught on very quickly. Like that's what's actually going on versus like time traveling, teleporting lizard person.
Oh well, you did get my hopes up there.
Yeah. It's actually a really high sci-fi game. I just tricked you guys all.
No, that was cool. I actually thought right after that, I was like, that was pretty well done. That's a hard thing. I've usually shirked away from it because it's a little intimidating, but you pulled it off well.
Yeah, and not to like just overtly say, "Hey, this is a flashback," and it was well done.
Well, thanks, guys. That's very kind words. My least favorite things are session ones. You have to juggle so many things. Like, how does person A know person B? Why are they here? Why do they care about each other? Why is Rank Shank such a weirdo? You know, just like these.
My least favorite thing is anticipating a session 2 that never happens.
That's pretty grave thing. Yeah. I'm glad the chat is on fire tonight. We got 7 people watching. Oh, we got some cool peeps.
Yeah.
Hi, Chris.
Got
Hi,
Jose,
Tamiko. Hi, Jonathan.
Tamiko,
Hi, Jose.
Jonathan. My brother John.
I'm glad you guys are all joining us tonight to watch this video. And I saw Nico earlier. Hello, if you're still watching. Hello, if you watch this in the future.
Hello,
That's
future
cool to
people.
have. Yeah, hello, all future peoples. That's cool.
It's okay, John. I've been drinking too. My kitty is demanding all the attentions. He's like, "You would love me."
Yeah, my
You
kid
love
was
me
actually
right now.
he was scratching at the door for the majority of this game time we've been playing so far. Like on and off for the past 2 hours.
Yeah, the last like 15 minutes there, I heard my dogs get off the couch and start pacing, which means they probably have to go to the bathroom soon. And I was like, oh, if they start doing the whining, they're going to wake my kid up.
Yeah.
So you better go let them out. They have such a tight schedule. Like if you're not up letting them out the back door, they're like pacing around the living room like, hello.
I'm so glad my little one is finally on a normal kind of sleeping schedule. He's not like waking up every couple of hours anymore, sleeping through the night. It's wonderful.
Lucky.
What's up, Mo? What are you doing?
I was just sitting here with my camera off like a dunce. Like I was like, "Hey, I'm here." Oh wait, forgot about that.
You were people watching again, weren't you, Chad?
I was just gonna watch you guys very cautiously and slowly.
Rank Shank Stark.
Can I say, Rank Shank is freaking awesome. The all the little chitters and quirks that you're putting into this.
Honestly, it's a lifelong love of Dark Crystal and Skeksis and like Jurassic Park. And I'm just basically throwing every vocal sound I've ever heard from dinosaurs into this freaking creature.
A little bit of Gollum in there, you know?
Dude, Dark Crystal. That shit freaked me out when I was a kid, man.
Rank Shank is me secretly trying to like reincarnate Chamberlain and bring him back. Yeah. But I'm loving this game, guys. Like flipping Crifoth is dope.
Yes.
It's so good. Like I love the fact that like in other games, I feel like carnage and just wanton slaughter is like not really looked well upon, but like the first 20 minutes we're already into blood fountain. Ba-da-da-da.
Yeah, I don't know what came over me. I was just like putting in some like Kali Ma there. I thought I was gonna start chanting.
Yeah, man.
Man, it's like
We're not.
It's like a Guar show. It's like being at a Guar show. There's just like water guns with blood coming out. Like,
We are Guar. Crifoth.
Hey, that if there was a band for Crifoth, Guar fits the role. Complete with alien ejaculate all over the front row. Sorry, this might have been a
Oh,
family
no,
show.
that's-
I just shut that off.
You're like, I'm gonna stop that.
So, like, we had a lizard devour liquefied tiefling remains, and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought it was a children's show. My bad."
This week on Sesame Street.
Frank's hungry.
I totally pictured you eating that thing like a
Cookie
freaking
Monster. No,
busted
no.
egg.
Don't eat the entrails. No. Bad idea, Rankshank. Cookies, not entrails.
And don't make me start belly laughing throughout all this. I'm not going to be able to shake that vision for the rest of the game.
C is for cookies, not entrails.
C is for cookies and cut the subtitles.
All right, I'm done. I'm done. I'm
Okay,
just gonna
thank
make
you.
this because otherwise I'm just gonna derail this whole thing. And
Just for the next 5 years, yeah. All right. So we're in this dank kind of cavern dug out from underneath this shack. Kind of a storage closet of sorts. You're fruitlessly trying to hold back the water from trickling out of this cask set into the wall on a stand. It's fairly large. Holds a lot of water. And good quality of water too, as you found out.
Yes, I think V would just quickly try and fill up her water skin with the water. How big is the cask?
It is fairly large. In terms of like gallons, it could be about maybe 20 gallons in size.
Would I be able to carry it, do you think? Like take it off and just kind of like...
I mean, it would be fairly heavy. It would burden you severely, but it would be carryable, I'd imagine.
Well, she just Yeah, she would kind of run to the she would try to hoist it and carry it on her shoulder. And if she could just like go to the entrance to the top of this at the bottom of this hole and yell out to Tali if he's still inside, or just yell out need some help down here.
So where do you think Tali got to, dragging his druid friend?
Were you heading outside, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're able to round the corner. You see your bounder laying half dead, half asleep, just in a miserable state, battered, bruised, starved, beaten, neglected, slumped against the side of the shack.
So I get the druid over to Attain, and I kind of lay him down, and I think that's when I hear someone calling from down there, and I just kind of look at Attain, and I go, "It's good to see you, old friend. Try to watch him." And I think she just kind of like flops back down, and I'm like, "Oh, that's not good." But I turn and I run back inside to try to see who's calling me.
And so if you kind of go up to like the bottom or like the top of this hole, you'd see V just like has this like cask on the ground. And she says, I have some good news and some bad news.
Good news first, I suppose.
We found storage down here. There's plenty of water and food.
Excellent. Attain is nearly starved. What's the bad news?
I never, ever thought I would ever say this. but the water is there's too much water for me to carry this up on my own. So
Got a smirk.
we need to figure out a way to get it up and get it to those who need it.
So he'll kind of look down at this large cask of water and look around. I imagine the ropes that we were all tied with are still kind of hanging.
Yeah, definitely, and most are definitely scavengeable. You guys had just like slipped out of your knots and cut, a few of them. So like, there's definitely a rope you can work with.
Okay, so yeah, I didn't put all my armor on or anything like that, but when I grabbed my shield and everything out of the box and like threw it over my shoulder, my short swords were kind of just like dangling there. So I feel like I just kind of like pull one. It's like hanging over my shoulder, and I just pull one out and go over to the ropes, and I just kind of cut each one as high up as I can to kind of gather as much material as possible. And then I'm gonna kind of come back towards the hole with the ropes, and I'm gonna kind of show them. I'm just gonna be like, perhaps we can put something together with these, and I'll start kind of tying each one to each other to make it a longer rope. And I'll toss the end down and say, is there anything you can attach that to?
Now I kind of look at the cask to see how I could secure it in such a way that it could be kind of lifted, that we could both kind of, I was thinking like if I could get it maybe underneath, but I don't know.
Yeah, that might work.
Just
Definitely-
to like kind
definitely
of
enough rope,
rock
right?
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, definitely to kind of like rock it so that I can get the rope underneath it and then just like tie it at the top.
Yeah. So, yeah,
Okay,
you can-
yeah.
So it would take a bit of effort. Maybe you can like leverage up even the cask of water on one end and kind of slip the rope through and then just let it down again and kind of place, kind of wrench it back up. It's doable. This takes time, for sure, but it's definitely feasible. In the meantime, Xander, you find yourself slumped against something warm, something furry, something kind of muscular beneath your jaw. As you come to, you find yourself kind of leaning against. You're sitting in a kind of a sitting position, leaning against a form of a large creature, chest rising and falling shallowly, but nonetheless still breathing.
Xandar, feeling consciousness seep back in, sits up and sees this creature dying and in dire need of both food and water. Not really knowing where anybody else is, I start looking around. Now, the thing about this realm is nothing comes without a price, right? In legends, I've heard that other druids would be able to create water out of nothing. We're not so lucky in this realm. The taint has destroyed almost all. So to get water, one must extract water from something that already has it. Looking around, the only thing that Xandar would see are the corpses of the two tieflings that had him bound, and feeling no real qualms about extracting anything from them. I'll reach back within myself and using the powers given to me, I reach in and seep the water out of the corpses themselves. And it would be like a mist rising from the bodies as they just kind of raisen up. to these desiccated corpses, like an unbandaged mummy, and directing the mist right around the bounder and rehydrating the poor creature to the best of my ability. Hopefully, letting it regain some vitality.
Absolutely, the bounder would be a bit more alert, awake, alive after this rehydration. You can see the bounder kind of sniff at the air and start like lapping up these droplets of water hanging in the air, a few at a time, and then just essentially kind of drinking the air. And the ears perk up. The bounder kind of sniffs at your form and shoulder, your face. There's just this uncanny like intelligence to these eyes now that it's awoke and more alert.
I would place my hand on its neck, kind of giving it a scratch and a kind of hoping to comfort the creature in any way that I can.
I imagine that this bounder probably makes a noise like a bark or a kind of a yip or something, not of pain or like anger or fear or threatening, but more like a noise. And Tally, you hear this noise your bounder makes. The noise that means your bounder is not dead, is not decaying out in the sun. So what do you do?
So when I had left the druid next to him, he had looked in bad shape. He couldn't really even, I'm sorry, she couldn't hold her head up at all. Hearing that kind of almost like a feline chirp coming from outside after she's regained some hydration, I can hear it while I'm hoisting the barrel, and I just kind of smile to myself like, I don't know what just happened, but it might work out. That's a dangerous thought in Crifoth, though.
I would notice him standing there, but not even really moving my head, but acknowledging that he's there. I'll say, "You will live."
Rankshank, these warm bloods are doing something very peculiar to this source of water. They've kind of fastened a rope around it and just kind of start to leverage it up out of this hole. What do you take of all this?
It's odd because I think Rankshank thought, okay, this is our hole. This is a hole. This is a water source. This is a place of shelter. This is a water source. We have meat, for the lack of better terms. Like, we have things. Why leave this? Why leave hole? Why leave hole? Hole gives us things. Outside hole, not so much. So his immediate reaction is one of curiosity and almost frustration. Like, why are you taking my water? Where are you taking that water to? Where is this going? We just found this. Why is it moving? And I think he watches this, but then realizes that like these new, he won't say friends, he won't even say like family or companions, but just these new meat sources are providing him with a water source. And so it's better to allow them to live than to do anything to them. So he like sniffs around, realizes that there's meat in this room, and I think his knowing that they're tending to that, he goes and he gathers up all the bits of dried meat that he can and like begins to shove them into pouches, because maybe he could use that dried meat for bait for other live prey later.
Yeah, you're able to gather quite a bit of this jerky. It's more than you could eat in a day, kind of thing. It's definitely several days worth of sustenance. And so, yeah, you gather these up, no problem. And as you're kind of rummaging through this little area, you find on that bench, kind of like almost like a desk. It's kind of a weird kind of platform. There are these thin pieces of paper, several of them kind of scattered across it. They've got strange markings on them that maybe mean nothing to you. And as well, you'd actually find actual weaponry, not this scavenged bone mumbo jumbo you've been dealing with for the past bit, but like these sleek axes. There's this axe made of this really sharp, like jet black material that's streaked with like red rivulets. It's jagged like broken glass. It's, sized for a normal person. So, a bit bigger for you. And there's a suit of there's like pauldrons kind of set out of the same material. This hellforged gear, things that legionaries wear. But you notice that this particular axe has like a chip in it, and it was, set aside maybe to be repaired or something. But other than that, like, this room is not that stocked of stuff besides the jerky you gathered.
I think maybe I do maybe grab that broken axe. Even though it goes against my Suri nature to, like, I'm so used to dealing with bone weapons and things that are not made of metal. I've lived and breathed off of those lashed together bone weapons forever. But I grab it. Presumably either I can use it or I can trade it for better food if I think I can get a one-up on somebody.
Xandar, as you're kind of leaning against this wall of this shack, rejuvenating the bounder and kind of socializing with it, I imagine, your eyes, out of the corner of your eye, you catch something there's a distant petrified tree a few yards off, maybe even 100 feet off. And upon it lands from flight this jet black bird, small, raven-sized, a scarbird, as they're known. These carrion birds that pick corpses clean. This solitary scarbird comes and perches on this branch. And it's kind of just looking around and then looks upon you with these just beady eyes. Cocks its head, just staring intently at you.
I would look, kind of cock my head to the side also. Say, well, hello there.
It doesn't respond to that. It still just looking at you.
Well, having nothing for it, I'm not privy to what's going on down there with the jerky or any of that. I would see if I can get the bounder to stand, see if it's regained any of its strength, hoping that a creature not laying on its side might discourage the Scarbird from trying to follow us around any longer than it would have to.
Yeah, the bounder's able to get up onto its feet, shakily at first, but kind of sits there on its rump. It's fully kind of postured, sitting on the ground. And V, you're kind of you finish tying this rope around the cask. You can see Tali, the ash elf, up ahead. You know, he's kind of ready to help pull up this water. And thankfully this cask is small enough to fit through the hole, the trap door. You know, if you were to put it on one of its sides. And you kind of saw Rank Shank behind you at the corner of your eye. He's like rummaging through the stuff in this little dank storage room, and he's gathered just fistfuls of this jerky and stuffed it in, you know, various cracks in his armor. And so the two of you hoist up this water. Is that the plan? Yep. So I'm going to need a strength check from either you or either V or Tally, with advantage because of the help you're offering. But one of you has to make the check.
So I guess the question is, yeah, are you... I don't think you'd have the leverage unless you climbed up the ladder part of the way and tried to, like, push. So I think you'd probably be, like, climbing up the ladder trying to support it as I, like, pulled it up and tried to clear the edge.
Yeah, I think so. Just, like, pushing up if I can, and then, yeah, just steadying it.
Yeah, which is almost unfortunate because that's my strength is not my strong suit. So I roll a 12 and I have no modifier for strength, so 12.
A 12 is enough to get it up, but it's laborious, it's time consuming, and the both of you would gain 1 point of exhaustion from this whole ordeal. More so, you know, more exhausting than a normal day. And we'll catch up on what exhaustion means in between sessions, and we'll even see it more next session, perhaps. You need to mark that down. But thankfully, after this labors, perhaps, you know, half an hour to an hour, you know, inch by inch, this cask finally rests upon the hard earth of the top level of this, you know, the top level of this single-story shack. It sits there now at your feet. You see kind of this trail of water in the puddle down below, of like where the water's just been slowly kind of pouring out and pooling, soaking the earth below.
Yeah, so once we get it up, and once V is kind of climbed up back to the main level, just gonna say, there's plenty enough for all of us. Why don't you go and give it to maybe those who need it more?
And yeah, so I will like start to. I know that the bounder and the druid are around the side, so I'm going to start to like kind of drag the keg there, thinking to let them drink from it.
And as you're passing, the both of you, as you kind of look back, you see that the tiefling corpses are like immediately dried up husks of what they used to be. The gooey remains of the first one, just dust and like starchy remains, you know. The other one is like, after being stabbed thoroughly by Rank Shank, it's just, you know, this like cracked, dry, dusty, gross thing. And so, and yeah, you kind of drag in the sand this keg of water, maybe rolling it, and sometimes, and then it gets stuck and you gotta drag it more. And you'd see Xandar just, what is Xandar like at this, with this bounder at this point, after an hour of just rest, I guess?
I don't know if rest would be what Xandar had been doing. Around this shack, what is the landscape like? I mean, I know there's the corpse of a tree, really, about 100 feet out. But I mean, are we like behind a dune, or are we on top of a hill, or are we on just flat land? Can I see any kind of distance?
The terrain is pretty rocky and jagged and kind of canyon like. There are lots of pits and valleys and heights and loose rock. You can kind of see, it's kind of just it's very jagged, uneven terrain, and so the line of sight, your kind of horizon, is very much broken up, just by these hills and jags and spires. Not like mountainous, but just
Right.
very uneven.
My guess is Xandar is both looking for any kind of movement from the Legionnaires, because these two were definitely not alone. Not only that, but looking for a way to get away from this place that would seem the safest route to take. Where there, I don't know if I would have any kind of knowledge if I kind of knew where water could be found along terrain.
I mean, there's always the benefit of going downhill,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're tending towards downhill, you're more likely to find water than uphill. It's just safe. On the inverse is if you go uphill, you get a good vantage point to see stuff, right? You just get that. So if you're wanting more safety, I mean, there's the two options, right? Do you want to be able to see your dangers from ahead, or do you just want more access to stuff and safety and nooks and crannies?
Knowing what would be around me would be probably top priority. So I would imagine up would be the direction.
And so there is this pretty vaguely nearby hill, let's call it, the same one that V overlooked, hours prior, before this assault on this outpost. And so climbing up it would be no ordeal, just one foot after the other, finding footholds in the earth, and it's not that steep. But you'd be able to stand atop this thing, and you can see the kind of beyond is more of a jagged plains of loose sand, dunes kind of forming as the winds move them. And behind you see the shack and the kind of the jagged terrain as it becomes even more jagged and canyon-like. Just as these large rivulets of earth have just fallen away, crushed by whatever may have happened, like scars, or even like just a smashed stuff. It just looks like broken earth everywhere.
A pocked landscape.
Yeah, it's a nasty place. But there's no sign of creatures, movement, legionaries within sight.
That's curious to Xandar. Wondering to himself why these two would be out here alone, and why would they be searching for the same female that I was searching for? Why capture me? Why capture the elf? All of these thoughts are swirling through Xandar's brain as I continue just to scan the horizon. I imagine that this is where the elf might come rolling the barrel out of the shack, maybe looking around like, what happened to the human?
Yeah, and so you kind of emerged, to give Xandar the human some water, and he's long gone. It seems he's no longer there. But your bounder is definitely much more active and perked. Still hungry and famished. You can see those sunken sides, but otherwise able.
So I drag the barrel there, and I'm kind of wiping my brow and looking around. He's not there, and curious. He looks back. Can I borrow your skin? And I'm sorry, he's V is like behind him, right? We came out together.
She'll just be kind of walking behind him. Yeah, sure, of course.
And I would kind of busy myself with, I would be taking the skin and I would be giving a Tane water from the skin and like squirting it in, and then I would go back to the hole in the container and I would fill the water skin back up with water, and I would drink some, and then I'd fill it back up and hand it back to V. But while I was doing that, I would be kind of, my hands would be busy, but I would be looking back at her and saying, the druid appears to have not been in such bad shape as we thought. He seems to have fled.
Well, fine by me. Humans are weak anyway. He'd just be a nuisance.
It would
Can't argue
probably
that.
be at that point that Xandar would come walking up from behind her and answer that comment with, not as weak as one might think. And seeing the water and parched myself, I motion as in, may I?
Yeah, I think I've already kind of filled it up for the last time and handed it back to V. So V, you have the your drinking vessel back.
She'd be just kind of like looking at you, these like almost cat-like eyes that kind of almost like glint in the light with this green color that is a very stark difference to her red skin. And she just kind of squints at you for a second, but then she nods and she hands over her water skin.
Drinking, Xandar is equally eyeing her with as much contempt, if not much more. I would take my fill of the water, cap the skin back, and hand it back gratefully, and answer to her, well, our business together is not finished. If not for you three, I would still be hanging there, meeting a most assured death. So for now is now.
V would just kind of nod, but maybe a bit confused of what you had said. But then she would say, well, speaking of which, where is that lizard?
I think at that time you hear Rank Shank just scuttling back up the hole as he comes out. Like every pouch that he has is bustling with jerky and weaponry and bits and baubles and anything he could basically get his hands on. He has scuttled into his hands, and he just looks at the three of you, not saying a word, but licks his lips and says,
Finds. Finds meats.
Tully's going to approach him and just say, kind of delicately, like, may I have a piece of that meat? He's going to pull his hand back.
he takes the meat. He takes like just a small piece of the meat. He hasn't tasted it yet. He puts his tongue to the meat and like
Salt meat. Yes. Yes. Real meat. Good. You sent this. Real meats.
Callie's gonna be startled, but he's just gonna kind of like be hearing him rant and then looking at the meat, realizing he doesn't like it. He's
so
like,
he hands you a handful of like a pocket full, basically. Shoves a pocket full of like this crusty jerky into your hand, and then like scuttles forward. And I imagine that he's looking around and he's sniffing each one of you, right? Like it's this weird moment where he's like going underneath your feet in like figure 8 sections and like sniffing to make sure you're all right. Everything is good. These people are something that I can trust. And the last person that he like goes to is V. And he looks to V.
You good meats. Yeah?
If you and your little gross, scaly hands come near me,
He hands you a small bushel of the dried meat from one of these other pockets and places it in front of your feet. Like,
Meat? Meat! Meat? Meat!
he gives you this curious look like you don't understand, but how hard is it to understand? I want to trade you this disgusting meat for the good meat that you gave me earlier. You provided me with good meat. Where is this good meat that you had?
yeah, she would just be like just totally confused, just like looking at this pile of meat on the sand and looking at Rankshank and just no good meat
No,
right now.
No good? No good?
Not not here. And she's just like looking at Tali like, please help me.
Tali's gonna kind of look over, but he has the meat in his hand. He sees his bounder starving, and he's just like, you're on your own with this one. And he takes a piece of the meat, he sticks it in his mouth, and he takes like 2 other pieces, and he walks over to Retain, just like makes a noise, and she looks, and he throws the meat over towards her, and he's just kind of chuckling like, good luck with that.
Xandar gets the point. And you said that they had our belongings inside this shack, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm still standing there half naked from being tied up and tortured for God knows how long. So as I'm walking towards the shack to retrieve everything that belongs to me, I'm motioning for Rankshank to follow me, and I point to the tiefling jerky corpse as I see the chest area where where my stuff is, and I'm searching through that. I find my gear and I find my backpack, but I am searching for something most precious to me. And then there it is, in a little pot is a birch sapling that I've carried with me since I left the grove. And with that, I gather my stuff together. Try not to listen to what Rank Shake might be doing to this poor, poor corpse.
Rank Shank does not care if there is no water in this corpse. He just cares that it's raw meat. And so he's just, you hear the cracking of bone and like the snapping of tendon behind you. And then when you look up, like when you turn around from that, it's like this, he's just got this bone in his mouth. He drops the bone for a minute, scuttles up to you, and extends a bloody claw.
You give good meat, sir.
I take the bloody claw and kind of nod in understanding of the savagery of this place. I'm almost embracing it, I suppose, and make my way out into the sun.
After a while, you hear, like, Rankshank doesn't usually use human words. Everything seems really garbled when he says stuff, but it's always
Rankshank this and rankshank that. Rankshank. Lonely. Long time. Kill lots. For a long time. But you,
he looks to you, Xander.
and her and him, you all meet. Eventually die. But now, meet the others.
And as our unfortunate three look up at each other from this strange creature having their speech, they feel some kind of bond over this strange affair at this shack, beginning to set out on their way with cask of water in tow, with Bounder, with Suri. They know that it won't be long until more legionaries come to this outpost. And so they leave. And that's where we're going to end this session. With their backs to the outpost. In the wasteland ahead of them. Thank you guys for having this was a very, very good game of good old Crifoth D&D, the classic Crifoth stuff. I had a blast running this. I had a blast like listening to the dialogue happening between players, how each took to different things just that I happened to throw at you guys, and just it was cool. It was really fun. I want to thank all of you for being awesome players. I want to thank our audience for being super active tonight. It's very, very heartwarming to have people just spending time watching us do goofy things. It's fun. Thank you guys all so much. This is Dice on Ice running Pieces of the Past, a Crifoth the Hunted campaign. And Chad, if you want to kind of do a little spiel little talk?
Yeah, I mean, like just on
Outro, yeah.
outro. Okay. Yeah. So this was phenomenal. I love this game. I love this setting already. I love the fact that like I I went into it going crazy, and you guys were like, you know what? It's okay to go crazy. And so thank you guys for letting me kind of go a little nuts and freak people out. Other than that, my name is Chad Nick. I run a YouTube channel by the same name. You can find me at Chad Nick, Knick, on YouTube. I run a bunch of games over there when I can. And other than that, I am also I am 1/3 of the Dudes of Yore with my buddies Jeremy Lilly and Jeff Doty. And I run a little WordPress website on game accessibility. So check me out over there at gastrogamer.com or no, .org. I want to make sure I do that right. Hold on one second. Make sure that that's the right plug because I don't want to send you guys to the wrong place. Yeah, it's going to be gastrogamer.org. There we go. And I'm done. Thanks, guys. It's awesome. I had fun.
Awesome, Megan. You want to spiel it over from here?
Yeah, so this was so much fun. I'm excited that this is a campaign and that I get to play with some phenomenal players. And of course, Connor, you're awesome. So it's really neat because so Crifoth can be a pretty dark and scary place. And so it's really, really fun to see like kind of the dark humor that can still crop up from a place as, you know, desolate and very, very savage as Crifoth. And I'm so happy that this campaign and setting like has been just so well received. And just yeah, it's an amazing thing to see people, you know, kind of enjoy something that has been made. And so yeah, awesome. I'm looking forward to session 2.
Awesome, yeah. Jason.
Yeah, so I mean that was a total blast. I've enjoyed every time that I've gotten to play in a Crifoth game. I think you guys are onto something really neat here, and I'm glad to be a part of it as we explore it more than just a one shot that I'm used to, right? And I'm looking forward to getting deeper and deeper into it. You guys are always awesome. I've played with each and every one of you multiple times over the past year, and you just all great players, great DMs, and just all around great people. And super glad to be here. Yeah, that's all I got. Thanks for everybody watching. Thanks for joining us as we play pretend.
Awesome, man. Rory.
Hey, my name is Rory. Had a lot of fun tonight. Crifoth is awesome. I love settings with really focused feels, and Crifoth definitely has that. Played with almost everybody here before except Chad, but having a lot of fun there as I knew he would bring a voice that I'd be able to close my eyes and know who was speaking, and he definitely did. That's great. I gotta say, I love the fact that when talking about the other party members, the Tiefling and the Ash Elf were more concerned with the human than the slightly crazy small lizard man, which really speaks to the oddity of Crifoth. So yeah, looking forward to this setting. I'm having a great time and can't wait for session 2.
Awesome, guys. Yeah, and everyone have a good night. And boop.